welcome to Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
I'm your keynote speaker, host, Madelyn.
I'm your Just Dance requisite ad host, Emma. We've got a panda.
And thanks for tuning into this week's show. It's side quest time here at Talk This, and Emma is up to bat. So, Emma, what are we going to be talking about this fine Sunday, this toasty Sunday?
Well, deeply against Talk This tradition.
I thought that too. When you gave this, I was like, I don't know, this is breaking protocol.
We're talking about something somewhat timely for once. Because I wanted to talk about video game conferences. When did they start having conferences? What's the difference between then and now? What's the point of a conference? How has the pandemic influenced conferences? And just for fun at the end, we can talk about the upcoming Weird E3 that's happening this year.
We 3.
Yes, they announced the Wii at the... Not the Switch Pro.
I meant, small. That would be bold if instead of the Switch Pro, they come in and they're like, actually, it's the Super Wii.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be fun?
That would be good.
So, kick it off. Are we starting at the beginning? The very beginning?
Sure.
So, it looks like, to me, in my admittedly... not academic research, that the very first true games conference was the tiny little GDC that took place in 1988. I think it's bold to call this a conference. Look, it's on Wikipedia's page as the first conference, so I can trust the good editors at Wikipedia, but having 25 people over to your living room does not a conference make to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels like a stretch, doesn't it?
That's like you threw a sort of successful party.
It's like a salon, Like one of those where you invite people over to, talk ideas, fancy ideas with each other.
Yes, Game Developers Salon would have gone over very well with the capital G gamers.
You know what I mean.
I know. I do know exactly what you mean. I'm just imagining. Imagine the roasting that would get. Not just because, salon is like a hair salon, but even the people that took it imagine seriously being like, yes, I'm going to the Game Developers Salon this year to get wasted and network with other developers.
I bet you could find, 40 really uppity... artsy game developers that would be like, yes, let us host a salon.
Ian Bogos probably does host Game Developers Salon.
Well, I've never received an invite, so...
You play too many you treat games as fun. That's the problem.
You're right.
You've had fun playing games in your life. You've not recognized that games are in fact a labor.
Yes, exactly.
There's all sorts of other fun kind of trivia out there about other things. There's a lot of things that we think of as really integral to conferences that have their roots much, much older than conferences. Like cosplay and the booth babe. The two integral parts of game conferences, really. I was sort of shocked. So, again, according to various articles, and of course... This is just the first recorded thing, but the first recorded cosplay is from 1908. Surely people were doing that before that, right?
Did they say what it was of?
Let me take a peek again. There was a more well-documented one that was of an alien from some comic. Let me see if I can pull up exactly what this cosplay was. But it was in Cincinnati. You just feel like, surely someone was doing Odysseus, right? At some further back.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Even without dressing up specifically as a specific character, I feel like there's a long history of people wearing funny outfits for themes, for parties or whatever.
Yeah, so our very first cosplay is someone dressed as a Mr. Skygack from Mars, with his wife joining him as Diana Dill Pickles, another comic character.
Sound
Mr.
like a fun
Skygack,
couple.
apparently a very popular early cosplay subject.
Is he easy to cosplay, or like is it like an astronaut or something? Because that's what it sounds like.
So Mr. Skygack is an alien visitor who like comes to Earth and like makes jokes about people. So it's like those comics that are really popular on social media.
The oh no ones,
I'm gonna need a little more than the oh no.
like with the little alien dude that goes oh no.
Maybe the ones with the aliens where they're like doing human things but they're saying it with different words.
Yeah,
Is that what you meant by the oh no ones?
I think so.
Where they're like, eat your sugar frosted wheat bombs, children. That's not a very good one. Procreation, offspring. It feels like that kind of humor is the idea of this comic. Anyway, he seems to have kind of a long and fuzzy pointy head sort of deal. Maybe they wore roller skates? There's kind of like I'm looking at a cartoon of them, this cosplay couple, which is sort of wild. Right, because they attended a mask skating carnival, aka the original video game conference.
Exactly.
Yeah, he has like a pokey head. Basically. I would not describe it as like easy cosplay, nor would I describe it as difficult. Relative to some of the things that I've seen in, 2020.
Yeah, cosplay's a bit... You'll find a lot of cosplay at conferences that are like PAX or
Yeah.
more fan-facing ones, but there are definitely a lot of conferences. Like, you wouldn't wear cosplay to GDC, for instance. Or maybe you would. But
why wouldn't you?
Because that's not really what GDC is.
I feel like I could network while, strolling around with my Buster Sword or whatever.
Yeah, give your big serious talk. Holding the Butterfinger Buster Sword.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like it could work.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the Consumer Electronics Show is not a games conference.
Yeah.
As you might have picked up from the title Consumer Electronics Show. But it does have the dubious distinction of being where the Booth Babe came from. Because they, in the 60s, hired women as Consumer Electronics Show guides. And what are they guiding you to? But to check out their booths.
Yeah, so maybe we come back to that. But I don't want to start out with the Booth Babes. I don't want that to be our introductory topic in the Games Conference episode.
Nice. Stick around, folks.
Yeah, it's just a play to get people to stick around. Just like
the Booth
Or maybe
Babe.
we should start with them, because that is the purpose of the Booth Babe, I guess.
Just to lure you in.
Yeah.
No, Emma, give us the lay of the land. Talk about some of the conferences for the uninitiated.
Well, there sure are a lot of games conferences.
Sure are.
Especially a lot if you start getting into, like, your local ones. They might be called conferences, they might be called conventions, they might be called expos, they might be called festivals, but we'll just sort of, put in, like, a conference umbrella under that. The two biggest ones in the US are probably GDC and the electronic... What is the third E?
Oh, I don't know. I had even forgotten that E3 stood for anything.
I think it's Entertainment Electronic Expo, but I don't know if that's the right order. But it's E3. Those are definitely the three words in some or combination. And there's also Gamescom in Europe, the Tokyo Game Show, which is really the only one of these that is not prohibitively expensive to go to. I looked it up. Tickets are, when you convert them to USD, $11.
Oh.
Yeah. Isn't that funny?
Why haven't we gone to that? It is Electronic Entertainment Expo, by the way.
Okay. Like even PAX, which is like $40 a day or something like that.
PAX was more than $30 or $40 a day.
Wasn't it like, I thought it was like 120 like total. So wouldn't that be?
I don't remember. It depends on when you buy the ticket too. But you're right.
It does also depend on when you buy the ticket. But even that, which I consider like the least expensive of the expos that I could possibly go to, like it's funny when you're like, I was just like looking at a list of conferences and they had the prices and they were like, Tokyo Game Show, $11. It's like, okay, I guess
I'll take it.
And then there's of course a bunch of smaller ones. PAX is probably the biggest of the small ones that happens in a few different cities in the US and Australia. And a couple other ones too. I think they have a board game focused one or a analog game focused one as well. Yeah. And then you can sort of start getting into like the geek zone ones too that are somewhat tangentially gaming related, like Comic-Con and stuff like that. But that's not what we're talking about.
That was a very technical term too. The Geek Zone conferences.
Yeah, the Geek Zone. You know, that's the official terms for them.
Yep.
And depending on which one you go to, they all have different sort of priorities. So smaller ones tend to be sort of fan focused, where you're checking out the games there, you maybe get to talk a little bit with the developers who happen to be there showing the game, you try some demos, stuff like that. So at PAX you won't necessarily get like a ton of big announcements. You'll maybe just get Borderlands 3 if it's a fun year, I guess.
Yeah.
GDC is the Game Developers Conference that we already mentioned. That one's it's a salon, as we said. It's for game developers to talk to game developers about game development. People have talks there that are kind of like TED Talks, basically, for a more popularized version of that. I watch GDC talks for work sometimes, so that's the type of show that it is and why you might not see cosplay there. And then E3 is the big show for companies to show off their games to the press and investors, and it only just opened to the public in 2017.
Pretty disastrously at first.
It's just been disastrously for E3 for a few years now, so...
Yeah. I meant specifically in regards to they clearly weren't adequately prepared the first year for the amount of people and how to handle the amount of people, and there was a lot of just badness.
Yeah, if you're strictly a fan of games, I would not recommend going to GDC or E3. It's just not worth it. Tickets are super expensive. GDC, you'll learn a lot about game development, but if you're not actually interested in being a game developer, there's not a lot of point of going there. And E3 is just, I don't know, why would you go to E3? It's been my impression of it. Like, there's lots of, if you're in the press, which is what it's for, you get a lot of interviews and behind the scenes time, but if you're a member of the public, maybe you get to wait in line for like 2 demos a day or something, and you can just stream the big announcements from your hotel room. So that is also probably not for you.
Yeah, E3 in general, I mean, this is a larger conversation that maybe I'm kicking off right now. Of the kind of 3 paradigms of conference, right? Like, I get, and of course I'm going to say this because I go to PAX, right? But, like, I get the idea of, like, the PAX conference, right? It's mostly, like, focused on, like, the kind of, like, casual attendee, right? I'm sure that there's a lot of networking that goes on at PAX, too, whatever. But, like, it feels like it's mostly focused on the casual attendee and, like, a large proportion of, if not, like, indie games, of, like, sort of indie games there. And while it's fun to have the big Final Fantasy VII demo or whatever it is that year, you know, hint, if you go on Thursday, you can play everything that you want to play. That's the big Talk This Sisters conference hint of the day, is you better get there on Thursday. It's a lot quieter, and you can snag those tickets for Final Fantasy VII.
Did we get those on Thursday? Or did we get them on Friday?
Maybe we got them... No, we definitely got them on Thursday.
Because I felt like we had, like, one day where we did, like, Final Fantasy VII and Animal Crossing, and that was, like, it.
I think that might have been Thursday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because I was like, okay, maybe we got the tickets on Thursday and they were for Friday, but that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
So, I'm pretty sure it was just Thursday we played the big games.
I think I still have the ticket around somewhere, so I'll have to fact check you on that after the show is over.
Yeah, be sure to post proof online. So, like, I get that experience. So, like, okay, it's a big fun, like, fan thing. It's not really, like, that serious. It's just a fun fan time. Cool. Love that. I also sort of get GDC. Insular. Hobnobbing it behind the scenes. Maybe we'll talk about, like, how the pandemic, at least to me, makes that sort of thing feel less necessary. But God, am I aware that so many people are like, everything has to be in person again. Yeah. I have to work in person. That attitude is everywhere. And whereas I'm like, why would you fly in for GDC when you could have these same networking meetings on Zoom? I understand that some people just miss the look of flesh and the smell of sweat, and good for them. Good for them. But something like E3, I especially now, like, just, like, don't really understand. Especially when there is something like GDC that is really serving the, like, inside baseball kind of version of this. Of why would this thing that exists in this weird middle ground that made a lot of sense when the industry really distributed its news via press, but now that everybody, and not, you know, of course they rely on the press to amplify all of their news, right? Not to say that the games press is obsolete or anything like that, but certainly announcing something at the platform of E3 is not necessary anymore to get big coverage. And so E3, I find an interesting relic. And it's interesting to wonder, how does it need to adapt?
I mean, I will say there is still sort of an allure to, like, E3 time, right?
Right.
So if you're sort of tapped into the game industry a bit enough to be, like, watching E3 conferences, you'll remember that E3 2020 was canceled last year due to the coronavirus pandemic. And sort of in its place, our good friend Jeff Keighley.
Oh, Jeff.
The man who does the video games.
Mr. Video Game.
Mr. Video Game himself put together something called Summer Games Fest, which was sort of like, he just made, like, an umbrella type thing to organize a lot of different shows that happened over the summer. And I will say that was exhausting. is what I remember. Because I try, to keep up with games because we have this podcast and I work in the games industry and I like video games. So I try to keep up with the shows. And oh boy, was I watching so many shows between June and August of that year. And I'm just going to say that having things mostly compressed to one weekend for E3 is so much preferable. It did kind of show me, like, the appeal of that thing. Because I did feel like, while I was actively, like, watching and putting things on my wish list, there were so many things happening that there's no way, even if smaller games were getting into these shows, like, people would forget them by the next day because there was another Sony Direct or whatever.
I do get that, but that to me mostly seems to benefit, well, I don't know. I would say that sort of level of engagement fatigue, as opposed to a single weekend, mostly benefits the kind of, like, industry watchers who are watching. I don't know. It's interesting to think about, like, okay, is it worse to get, like, a platform where you're kind of, like, crammed into all of the stuff that's happening over a month and probably no one really remembers? Or is it worse where it's like, oh, well, actually you didn't get featured at all because it's only a weekend? That's hard to quantify, right? Of like, is the kind of crush of E3 worth it? And also, do you get the best coverage when people are doing it just like 72 hours straight or whatever? And maybe that's basically what's happening anyway, just over a longer, more online time. But maybe Jeff should have just done a better job with the scheduling of it all.
So E3, just defying all odds, is back this year in purely virtual format. So there's not like a show floor or anything. They're just like hosting the usual press conferences, basically. Which has been interesting from like the journalists that I follow on Twitter being like, well, I registered. What does that mean? I don't know.
I liked Gene Park's business card. I'm sure you've seen that.
Yes, he works at WAPO.
I work at WAPO.
And also they just announced the schedule for like a thing that happens this week, which if you're press writing about that, or even a YouTuber writing for yourself, like, you have to schedule around that, right? You have to be there for the shows so that you can write about them, which makes it hard to get a schedule when E3's like, we'll tell you when we tell you, was basically one tweet that they sent out.
My interpretation of that tweet is they don't know.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, Sony actually hasn't bothered to tell us when they're... I mean, I think Sony is on there, but just as an example, like, oh, Sony hasn't bothered to tell us when the thing is, so we're gonna pretend we're being like, oh, well, play it cool, bros. But really, they don't care enough to tell us.
Yeah, which is ask the question of like, well, what exactly are you organizing here at E3? You're just having them slap your name on it, and that's about all you're doing. Sony, by the way, is not participating in E3 this year. Was not planning to participate in it the year before. And was 2019 the one where they did like the weird one where they focused in on like 3 games? I think so.
I had thought that they weren't part of it in 2019, but the whole point here being it's so nebulous.
Maybe that was 2018. No, it must have been 2019 because they're talking about like The Last of Us Part 2 and Ghost of Tsushima. So
oh, you're right.
Feels like it should be 2019. They like put everybody in like a theater that looked like The Last of Us Part 2 and then moved everybody to another theater to talk about the rest of the games. A real weird one. But
the power of in-person performance.
And in contrast this year, Nintendo is actually officially part of E3 again. Usually they have a Nintendo Direct like right after E3 anyway. But they are actually like officially under the E3 banner with their Nintendo Direct this year, is my impression. So,
I mean, they made so much money on Animal Crossing that they figured, might as well.
I mean, I think it's weird. I really, like, of all of them, I think Nintendo needs E3 the least at this point. It's been so long since they actually participated in it.
I know. Nintendo Direct does, for whatever reason, feel more legit. I don't know why the Nintendo Direct feels more legit than State of Play. Every time I see State of Play, I'm like, okay, like, I'm moderately interested in this, but, like, I, like, laugh at it a little bit. I don't know why.
I mean, it's very clearly modeled after the Nintendo Direct format, but so is everything now. So that can't be held too hard against them. But also Nintendo just like they don't have full Nintendo Directs very often anymore. They have all their mini Directs and their indie Directs and stuff like that. And a lot of the state of plays have been focused in on like one game too, that I just haven't been interested in.
Do you think that Nintendo is doing this for Switch Pro?
I mean, I'm sure they're going to announce it soon. I really don't have any doubt that it exists. So it might be at their E3 show, or it might be before then. Who knows?
Do you think they'll like, they have this E3 show just so they can do a big middle finger to E3 and announce the Switch Pro, like, 2 weeks like, a week before? You know what I mean? Like, like, they're like, we're gonna get this, but just to show our power.
I do wonder if they're participating this year because they don't have to, like, go there.
Maybe.
Because it's virtual.
Yeah.
So they might as well. Because I think that's probably why. Because if you didn't know, I mean, Nintendo's a big company with a lot of money, so whatever. But actually exhibiting at conferences, especially like E3, is prohibitively expensive. Because you have to pay for your booth space, you have to pay so that your booth looks good, you have to pay your people to go to the place where the conference is and set up the booth and host the booth. Yeah. So E3, this is from 2013, by the way, was for a 600 square foot booth, electricity costs not included, was $10,000 per day.
That's
not
a
as much.
Huge booth, though.
Not as much as GDC's 50 foot by 50 foot booth from 2017. $41,500 per day.
Okay, but like, that's a gigantic booth. Like, that's huge. Like, I hear you, that's a ton of money, but 50 feet by 50 feet? I'm like, how wide is my apartment?
Well, if you're Nintendo,
yeah,
right?
Right,
that's,
of course.
That's the size that you want. You want the large one.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I think it's got to be more to do with, like, nobody wants to take the flight from Japan.
Oh, yeah,
they
for
can
sure.
avoid it.
So I'm looking at this 2017 article from Game Industry Biz called The Cost of Exhibiting at a Video Game Convention. For these, by the way. So they broke it down into, like, doing it cheap, upgrading, and going all in. Based on averages from all these different conferences and how you might break it down. So doing it cheap would be about, for one person at a 3-day convention, which, by the way, is a lot of work for one person.
Yeah.
Regardless of what convention you're doing it at, would be $2,240, probably. Upgrading, 4 people, 3-day convention, $8,965. Going all in, 4 people, 3-day convention. This one specifically uses E3. $45,131.
I mean, I guess what I'll say is I was a little bit surprised about, I mean, you know, obviously it means that you're just, like, absolutely murdering yourself to do it if you're doing it alone, right? But, like, I was surprised at how relatively affordable you could do it if you were doing it on the real cheap. I'll admit, like, I was like, it did surprise me, and granted, some of these prices are probably, like, quite out of date now, right? But it did surprise me that small booths you can rent to the tune of hundreds of dollars a day. I don't know. I don't know why that surprised. I just expect everything to be $1 billion.
I mean, it's still decently expensive if you think about it. Is like your very small development team, and you have to think about like what convention you're going to and whether it's actually going to help you to recoup those costs, right? So, if you're a very small development team debuting like, you know, a game, and you got like one of those little side booths at PAX that we walk through sometimes, and it's like $2,500. Like, is it worth it to do that? Are you going to make back that $2,500 thanks to going to this place? And also your, you know, probably broken knees and back at the end of it.
That's the real trick. Yeah, I know. It is kind of like a... Okay, let's assume. So it's an indie game, right? Which means no one is going to spend more than $10 on it, right?
Yeah.
So in some ways, though, it's like, you know, it just has to generate... I mean, this is a lot, probably, but it has to generate 250 sales that you wouldn't have otherwise gotten. Which, you know, if you're in something like the Indie Mega booth, seems like, yeah, totally. I bet it will do that. If you're in one of those crappy side booths all around the corner with the army recruiting next to you, like, oh, maybe it won't.
Yeah. Yeah. But you have to think about, like, you know, like the Mixer one that was at the last PAX we went to?
Yeah.
With, like, the big signs and stuff.
Yeah. And
all the different screens. You have to think about, like, man, like, the electricity they're using for that and the booth space.
Yeah.
I mean, Harmonix is a bigger company, so they can sort of afford to do that. And it definitely helps draw attention to it, but...
I like the
gamble.
Subtle disdain for Harmonix.
No, I have no disdain for Harmonix. I thought their Mixer booth was maybe a little much, but I have no disdain for them.
No, but like that was paying for press coverage, right? You know what I mean? Like having that giant booth wasn't really for the people. I mean, it was. Of course, it was for the people who were at PAX. But you make that kind of investment because you're betting on the journalists writing about your booth and your game because it's so big and flashy. Also, I mean, it makes sense for a game that was, like, basically DJ Simulator, too, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, nice to have that amount of money to throw at your marketing budget, of course.
Right.
But, at least in that case, I was like, you know what, that's sort of simpatico, right? People are going to think this game is way more fun, and they're going to be more likely to buy it if they're, like, up on a stage doing it, than if they're in the side booth spinning to themselves. Like it would be if they were a real DJ.
Yeah.
Too realistic.
I will really be interested to see how conferences come back next year, though, when things are finally in person again. Because E3's had some... The year before they were canceled, they did dox every journalist that registered.
It's, like, not funny, but it...
It's funny in the, like, you know, awful way. Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, basically they just left, like, there was some link that was publicly available on their website that brought you to, like, a spreadsheet of, like, journalists and YouTubers and anyone who had registered, basically. For press credentials, I think, specifically. All the stuff they had to give to register, which includes emails and phone numbers and home addresses. Yay!
It just doesn't make any sense. Like, why would that ever be a page on your website? Even a private page. Surely E3 is using some kind of, like, Salesforce, or, like, they can't possibly, it can't just be, like, a Google form, right? Like,
I don't know.
It can't be, like, our WordPress comment form, surely, right? Like, they have to have some kind of CRM behind this.
I don't know. Clearly not good enough, because they did take it down once it was noticed, but people had definitely downloaded it before then, so at that point it's pretty much It's
Yeah,
out there.
you really can't. You have to take it down before anyone notices.
Yep. So, yeah, that's bad. And then they canceled the year after that, and then this show is weird. So, I mean, I really saw a lot of people when they canceled last year being like, well, E3's dead, right? Yeah. But they're back. But this show feels a little weird, so we'll have to see what everybody's thinking next year.
It's sort of interesting because I wonder if by next summer this sort of like Rumspringa feeling of this summer will have faded. You know what I mean? I feel like, you know, if E3 was doing it in person, everyone would be like, oh, this is kind of irresponsible. But you would also get a sizable contingent of people who are like, yes, the smell of the convention hall, the crowded hotel rooms, this is what
the
life
con
is.
disease. Normal con disease.
And I do wonder if by next summer some of the novelty of that will have faded.
I don't know. I think by next summer I'll be just getting to the point where I'm like, okay, I can be in a crowd again. So
I'll bully you. If they do PAX in the end of February, I'll bully you into that.
I mean, I think I'll probably be ready by then. But like, you know, this is slightly off topic, but like all the bands being like, we're doing concerts in October. I'm like, nope.
You know what? I've got my jukebox tickets just in case. I don't know if I'll be there or not, but I did buy
I mean,
them.
I can't imagine going to a concert. I don't know.
I mean, I can't imagine it either, but I wouldn't have imagined, like, walking around semi-normally, like, 4 months ago. You know what I mean? Like, things are changing so fast,
Sure.
It's hard to predict how I'm gonna feel.
Sure.
But it does sort of feel like, if I were planning E3, I'd be like, what are some can't-miss in-person experiences that I could create for this? So, like, Doug Bowser dressed as Bowser meet and greet. Like, it's gonna have to be stuff like that. Like, how can I create the Sega Saturn moment that you have in our notes?
Well, you don't want to do that.
Yes, you do. If I'm E3, that's absolutely what I want to do. That's
no, you don't want to. You want to do the PlayStation moment, not the Sega Saturn one.
That's what I meant. Like the like you have to have been there and seen this kind of moment.
To share that anecdote, the first E3 in 1995 had Sega Shadow Drop the Saturn, their video game console, for the West. What would be really funny
in the console generations episode a little bit.
Yeah. What would be really funny is if Nintendo then
Shadow drops the Pro.
Switch Pro. That would be hilarious. But anyway, so basically they had been planning for an autumn release, but so was PlayStation, and Sega Japan was getting a little nervous, and so they Sega in general decided, like, okay, just let it out. But they weren't really ready, and the Saturn wasn't really on the shelves at a lot of retailers, and it was $3.99. And right after they announced it, the PlayStation guy came on stage, said $2.99, and then left the stage.
Kicked over the podium.
And that was pretty much the death of Sega right there, as a console manufacturer.
The death of Sega.
Yeah.
Somewhere I was reading someone being like, wouldn't it be great if they announced the Sega Saturn here this year?
What?
I don't know. No, I'm like, okay. What could be like, are we ready for like our like predictions moment here, or is there more? Should we keep talking about?
Well, I mean, you gotta be there in person for the booth babes.
You do, the booth babes. I couldn't promise the booth babes and not deliver.
Gotta come back for the booth babes. Which, though, if you don't know what a booth babe is, it's what it sounds like.
It's a baby.
It's a baby at the booth. You have to defeat it in the game before you're allowed to go into the booth.
Yeah.
you have to solve its riddle.
This should be what Sega does. They'd be like, oh, have you played Yakuza 6? Here, you can test drive it in real life. Calm the baby with the booth babe. That was a missed opportunity for them.
They're like, come into our booth, we have a Yakuza 6 demo, and you come in there and it's just like one of those like babies with a Wii remote in it. Babysitting mama.
No, it would be real babies. It would serve it'd be like the child sitting, you know, like we'd provide a haven for working mothers. So like their children can be cared for while they're working at the booth babes can leave their children to be booth babes.
I don't know if I would trust like a legion of gamers with a bunch of babies, to be honest.
Build the immune system, it's fine.
No, booth babes are sexy ladies that stand outside your booth to lure people into them with their sexiness.
Are booth men banned?
There aren't really booth men.
Hypothetically, if I were to...
It's more, I believe the bans are on like semi-nudity. Like, having people there, like, semi-nude.
Topless man. Yeah. Or nay?
Nay is what I would say.
Why?
Semi-nudity.
But that's not nude for men.
I mean, yes it is.
I mean, it's unclothed.
It's not like women are showing their private parts. That's not what semi-nudity is.
You're right, my bad.
But yeah, so it was pretty common practice at conferences, especially back when it was a real boys club, the game industry, to have just the ladies at the booths to lure people in. You would get, multiple things happening of people who either like really didn't like them there, or people who liked them there. Both problems in their own ways. I read a story of one that was like they would like try to quiz them on like gaming knowledge.
That's so gross. That's always so gross.
I think this is a great example. The one I read was like, which Ayn Rand book is BioShock based on? Which is such like, you couldn't write a better question to, like, illustrate the person that is speaking to the booth babe. Right?
It's so true, but also that's such an easy... You don't have to know anything about the game to get that right.
Yeah, I know.
Like, I recognize that Ayn Rand must have written other books, but, like, there's one Ayn Rand book. You know? Like, there's one.
Yeah. So there was definitely, let's see, E3 banned them briefly in 2006, where you would get a warning, and then if you didn't comply to the warning, you would get a $5,000 fine payable before you left the show, and the women would have to go be clothed satisfactory for E3 before they were allowed back on the show floor. But then they loosened the restriction in 2009, and as far as I can tell, have not rebanned them in any form.
Perfect.
See, you brought up the CES guides, so just as a trivia fact, their sort of booth babes were not banned until 2019.
How about them apples?
And PAX banned them in 2010 and has not rescinded that yet.
Wow.
So that's another reason you don't really want to go to E3.
2022.
Kind of sucks.
Return of the booth babe.
That is the thing. You have to be there in person. Or maybe you don't. I don't know.
Virtual booth babe.
Yeah. Nothing against the women who are working as booth babes, right? They're doing their job.
It's just a cynical ploy.
Yeah. It's just more the existence of them at the show. It doesn't feel like the right thing for what is ostensibly supposed to be like a serious gaming conference, right?
And you're gamers with a capital G are toxic, and again, no shame on the women doing these jobs, but you're certainly not putting them into like a safe position.
Yeah.
But Bowser booth babe, let's do it. Doug.
It seems like such a stronger move to have like someone in cosplay outside your booth anyway, not just like random people,
Plus then you could probably get away with it, right?
Yeah.
You'd be like,
although there's somebody, some name that I recognize, some famous person on the internet was in like had to leave some show floor. I'm very vaguely remembering this from one of the articles I read. She was dressed as like the Lollipop Chainsaw video game. Do you know that one?
Vaguely.
Yeah. That they said no, even though that's cosplay, right?
I mean, that's good.
I guess. I don't know. Cosplay's different to me, so...
I agree, but it's like, if somebody came as, like, a naked game character, you wouldn't tell them that was fine, right? Like...
Sure, she's not naked.
I didn't mean to say that this particular person was naked. I was just saying, presumably there have to be some limits to cosplay, even if you don't think those limits should be particularly extreme. So, while it's like, I would have to see the costume in question to determine if it was like... I don't know. But... yeah. I respect the ability to have some rules on cosplay, even if perhaps this situation, even if those rules are predominantly centered on sexualized content, that's probably not the right focus for the rules, but whatever.
I mean, there are a lot of shows that have the, like, orange tips on your
right. Well, you just need to do that. That's just good practice, always. The show shouldn't have to tell you to do that. You should just do that.
It's like the specificness of it, though, is more what I meant.
Yeah. All right. Hit me with your predictions.
Oh, man. I don't know.
Fascinating.
I don't have very many, like, high expectations for E3 this year, if I'm being honest. I think the Switch Pro will get announced at some point soon. I'm curious if Sony's gonna do anything, their own PlayStation Direct or whatever they're called.
State of Play.
Their own State of Play during the show. I'm especially curious. Square Enix has said that they're keeping most of their showcases like under wraps, but they didn't mention either of the Final Fantasies coming up in like their press release. So I'm curious if Sony's gonna be like, we've got a State of Play, and like call dibs on showing those trailers at some point. Yeah. I'm curious what Xbox will show. They've bought up a lot of game studios in the last few years.
It's an Xbox and Bethesda Games showcase on Sunday, June 13th. So, Skyrim for PS5.
It's for PS5.
Yeah.
That's a bold prediction. At
Skyrim
the Microsoft show.
Remastered. Oh, you're right, not PS5. Sorry. That was stupid. For Xbox Series X.
Bethesda has, like, they're doing Starfield is the one that people are waiting for right now, I think. So maybe we'll see a cinematic trailer for that, is my guess. Yeah.
Who will be the Smash reveal?
You're right, there's definitely going to be a Smash reveal. How many mothers are left? 2?
I assume that it's infinite.
No, this is the last. They announced an extra 5 after the 5 additional ones, but those are the last ones.
No, they're not.
Yeah, they are.
They'll just announce another 5.
Everyone keeps, like, saying that Sakurai is going to retire soon. It's, like, a rumor going around.
Why would he retire? He doesn't look that... How old is he? He's in his, like, 50s, right?
Why would he retire? Because he works off an IV, probably. He's told stories about hooking himself up to an IV.
Well, that's... he doesn't need to do that. He just needs to
Well,
work a little less. He can retire
that would be
the
nice
IV.
if he could do that, wouldn't it? Except apparently the Smash characters are infinite.
He makes 2 characters a year. What else is he working on? I'm just kidding, of course.
Okay. I want Phoenix Wright. I don't think that will actually happen, but that's what I would like to see. I think that's a fun one. Be a little different.
I don't even know like who's already in Smash, right? So it's like Prince of All Cosmos, Katamari Damacy sequel.
Katamari Damacy would be fun, but that's a real stretch, I think.
Not if they announce a sequel. Is Konami presenting? Who even does Katamari?
I don't know who publishes Katamari.
Gearbox. I was seeing something about a Tiny Tina. I don't even know who is Tiny Tina. I know it's Borderlands. But I don't remember ever meeting Tiny Tina.
Maybe let's show a trailer for the Borderlands movie. That would be lame.
Yeah. Probably something for, free up to level 60 with Heaven's Word. Final Fantasy 14.
They've already announced the next expansion for that, so I know
but it'll still probably, these, like, stupid shows are always, like, 3/4 stuff that you've already seen.
Oh, sure, yeah, I'm sure they'll show a trailer for it.
Do you think there'll be a new The World... Well, I guess people have, like, a demo.
Will there
now,
be
right?
a new The World Ends With You?
Trailer.
Yes. Oh, I don't know. They just came out with previews for that.
So do you think
that's just interesting also, because a lot of these conferences, like, you'd have the press go to, like, their special press demo, right?
Right.
So, apparently they didn't, like, just, like, send them a version of the game. They streamed the game over Parsec.
Weird.
They got 2 hours to play with it.
I mean, that's probably safer, right?
Yeah. But that does make a case for, like, maybe you don't... Like, if streaming platforms are becoming, like, streaming platforms are becoming more reliable, and there's less worry about, like, too many technical difficulties, maybe we don't even need to be in person for these, like, behind closed doors press demos anymore.
It's all about the sweat.
Oh, yeah, the allure of that sweat,
Sweat and bacteria, man.
And of course, we'll have the ruling for the Apple versus Epic trial. At the very end.
I forgot that was going to be in the Nintendo Direct. Oh, right. I forgot I already predicted that the judge is the next Smash character.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I'm excited for E3, despite everything. Despite
After
its issues.
50 minutes of absolutely trashing E3, Emma comes in with the stinger. I'm excited for E3.
I don't know, like, despite, whatever, how, exploitative it is. It's just like, here's a bunch of games that we want you to pre-order and everything like that. It's fun. It's fun to, like, be like, here's what's coming, and there's always going to be at least 1 or 2 games to get excited about. I like a good trailer,
You're hoping for more Project Triangle Strategy, aren't you?
I'm waiting for working title Project Triangle Strategy. It's not a working title. That will be the title.
PTS.
They're just lying to you. I feel that, team. I'm also bad at titling things, so...
Well, folks, did this episode make you want to go to a games conference, or did it make you want to stay far away, or did it remind you that E3 is coming up and you need to mark your calendar to sit in front of your computer for a few hours and be spoon-fed some good marketing content.
I hope there's at least one trailer. I shouldn't even have to hope this, because of course they'll be with Willie Unfortunate music choice.
I hope there's a Bugsnax. Not literally. I mean, well, I would welcome a Bugsnax 2 announcement. That would be fun. With a similarly catchy song. There really does need to be a good song. Good song. And it's not going to be that Deathloop song. The It's Deathloop! Or whatever, you know.
Is that how it goes?
I'll have to look it up after the show. But I feel like it had big Bond theme energy, but not in as catchy as Bugsnax way.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, if you've ever been to a conference, or you have thoughts on conferences, or just thoughts on this episode of the show in general, you should hit us up on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Talk This Podcast. You can also visit our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can read all about the show, check out the games that are in the hat for our main episodes, and read our blog, featuring long-running series, Clickbait Boyfriend, and Split Screen, among others. So check that out if you've got some time between presentations. Finally, and most importantly, you never want to miss an episode of Talk This on Sunday at noon, so you can subscribe, and you won't even have to remember that it's Sunday. It'll just turn up on your podcast listening device of choice. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, Pandora Podcasts online and on the app, Overcast, Pocket Casts, anywhere you can find podcasts, you can find Talk This. Next week is some games.
We are talking about next week. Was it Parasite Eve?
Yes, it was definitely Parasite Eve, because I was like...
And Immortals Phoenix Rising.
Right, because you were like, is it Phoenix? And we didn't look it up for this week.
We're unfortunately sticking Madelyn with another, game conundrum, because I don't think Parasite Eve is available on any modern systems.
Isn't Immortals Phoenix Rising, only computers?
No, I think it's on... I don't know if it's just next gen, though. It's not only computers.
No, it's on all systems.
Okay. But it's a new game, so I don't know how expensive
So I'm in danger.
I really thought at least one of the Parasite Eve ones would be on PlayStation 3, but nope.
Well,
PlayStation 2 and the Vita.
Great. Incredible.
Yeah. Maybe just to make fun of us, they will announce a Parasite Eve remaster.
Wouldn't that be funny? It would be too late for me by that point.
Yep. I don't think they would shadow drop it either, so...
They're like, it's already on your Switch.
Anyway, thanks for listening. Look forward to next week. And hit us up. Tell us what you liked about E3 once that happens. Next weekend. Do you want to sign us off, Madelyn?
Yeah. Listeners, I hope that this week you have an easy, excellent, emotional in a positive way week.